So I know a little bit about you, so I'm going to kind of go through that and you can fill in some stuff. Obviously, I've asked you about your story and where you're from, and I'd like you to kind of start there, where you're from, where you grew up, because I know that, but most people don't. And that, I think, foundationally sometimes influences us.
Yeah. So I'm born and raised pretty much in Kingston. Mm-hmm. Lived in Smith Falls for a couple of years when I was fairly young. But for the most part, most of my public school journey and high school journey was in Kingston. Moved then when I met Kevin, I was 23. Kevin was working in Toronto at the time. So I left Kingston at that point. I had just finished university. I actually went to school to be a lawyer. I did philosophy and psychology, and then decided that I didn't want to actually do law. I went in and sat in a couple courtroom cases and decided, no, it wasn't for me. So shortly after that, I met Kevin. I moved to Toronto. We lived there for a year and a half. Then we decided, you know what, let's look around for buying a house. And as everybody knows, Toronto is very, grotesquely, overpriced, so to speak, compared to, say, the Napanee or Kingston region. So we ended up looking back at houses in the Kingston and Napanee area and settled on a house on Little Creek. And so we bought our first home and moved back here. And then I got into a couple of sales jobs. And I don't know if you want me to get into sort of the background of that.
You can certainly share what you did in previous to what you're doing now. I think that's good content.
Yeah. Okay, great. So we moved back here, and I was working serving, still working at Racks, and that's sort of how I put myself through university. Following that, my parents actually asked me to take over their hair salon. Mm-hmm. So I took over their hair salon in Kingston, and it was their baby. They'd had it for like 30 years and had put their blood, sweat, and tears into it, and they very proudly handed the keys over to me. And very sadly, in 2 short years, I drove it right into the ground. Mm-hmm. Very devastating for all of us. It put a huge financial burden on myself and Kevin, my husband. And I was $100,000 in debt. We were on the verge of a divorce. And every day I woke up and looked at him and said, I hate my life. I also became suicidal. I almost drove over the Skyway Bridge. And on that exact same day that I, luckily veered off, drove to the other side of the bridge, pulled over and thought, oh my God, how did my life get so bad? So glad that I didn't go over the side. On that very same day, my mom handed me the movie The Secret, and my life forever changed. So from that moment on, I started living, breathing, eating, sleeping the law of attraction. At the time, I was working 3 jobs just to keep things afloat. And I veered off into real estate. I was just getting my real estate license, and a month later, after that episode, I had graduated and started selling real estate. And so I set a goal the very first year of earning $100,000, the exact same amount that I was in debt for. And I made $97,000 my first year. Wow. And thought, wow, this stuff really works. So from that moment on, I really got into personal development. Right. So it's been almost 12 years now, I guess. And I live, breathe, eat, and sleep the law of attraction, and am obviously very interested in leveling up. Mm-hmm. I grossed $1 million in 2017. So I've come a really long ways in that period of time. Probably the biggest lesson that I learned is sometimes the hardest things that you've gone through in your life that at the moment seem like the very worst actually can turn out to be the very best.
They're the gifts.
Yeah, they are the gifts.